Hey there, it's Mitzi. Welcome to my channel and happy May. This is the first week in May and I have lots of great books ready to read during the month of May, and May is my birth month. I was born at the end of May, and this year I will be the big 50. And so I'm really excited about this birthday because that's a huge milestone, and it's just a wonderful celebration. And so I will be celebrating with you. Know that I am going to take you along as I celebrate my 50th birthday. I've got a couple of things I want to do on the channel, and I think it'll be a lot of fun during the month of May. But that will be at the end of the month, so stay tuned for that. Today I just want to talk about the things that I read during April, and I participated in several readathons, so we're going to talk about those too. Now, I have already posted the Picture This readathon post of the picture books that I read during the month of April. So I won't be sharing those here because there's a lot of those and it would take too long. I did read one other picture book that I failed to mention. I'll mention that one in this post, but the rest, just visit that other video. I'll try to link it below in case you're interested in the Picture This readathon. And thank you for the host of the Picture This readathon. I really enjoy picture books. So I participated in the Picture This readathon, the Amish in April, and the backlist booklist or booklist backlist. I think I have them switched, but that readathon too. So thank you for all the hosts of these wonderful readathons because they really encourage me to read and pull things from my shelf. That's the best part of it. So the first one that I read was The Vanderbeekers and the Hidden Garden. I had wanted to read this for middle grade March and failed to do so. So I made sure to pick it up in the month of April. And I enjoyed this one, but I did have a few issues with it. I do love the Vanderbeekers and I do want to continue the series, but I didn't agree with, it's almost as if they justify doing things that are wrong. I mean, they steal, they lie, they breaking and entering is a crime. I mean, that's something you're not supposed to do. It's against the law. And the thing is, they justify it as in, oh, it's okay to break the law, to steal, to lie, as long as it's for a good cause. And I don't agree with that. So that I had an issue with. Because at the end, it's like, okay, well, we done these things because it was for the greater good. I don't know. It really rubbed me the wrong way. I did not like that about the story. But I do think it was just the premise of this particular story because I love the first one so much. And I already have the next two, so I do plan on continuing in this series. I really enjoy this family. I love the relationships in this family as well. Then I read for the, what was it called? The Booklist Backlist Readathon. I think it's Booklist Backlist or Backlist Booklist. And there were several prompts, and this I kind of made fit a prompt, and it's Mrs. Jeffries' Dust for Clues. This is the second in the Mrs. Jeffries, Inspector Mrs. Jeffries series. It's a Victorian mystery. It's just a cozy mystery, and it's super cute. And I will continue this. I think what I like about these, not only is it Victorian, which I love, of course, but the teamwork. I like how the housekeeper and the other people that work for the inspector, how they all work together and they love the inspector so much. I just really like that about this series. It's just a feel-good series, and I know I will continue this one. For the Booklist Backlist Readathon, I also read Excellent Women by Barbara Pym. I loved this book. I've read only one other by Barbara Pym called Quartet in Autumn, and if you've follow my channel, you know I've talked about that one before, how I didn't like it when I first read it, but the more I thought about it, it became a favorite read. This one is different from Quartet in Autumn. Quartet in Autumn is a lot sadder. I mean, there's some funny parts, but it's a lot sadder. This one is just situational comedy. It's really funny. It's about a girl. She's single. I think it's in the 1950s, like the early 1950s. And her roommate has moved out at the beginning of the story. She has the place to herself, and some new neighbors move in. But it's about her relationship within her community, with the new neighbors, with the people in her church. It's just really funny situations that she gets into because she is a single woman during the 1950s. And they assume things like she needs a roommate. Well, she really doesn't want a roommate and things like that. She gets herself in trouble because she tries to help in certain situations, and it just makes things worse. Everyone assumes that she doesn't have anything better to do because she's single. There's a lot of those kind of things going on in this story. It reminds me almost of a Jane Austen type story. It's not Jane Austen, of course, but the way Jane Austen would kind of make fun of society, and it would, you know, it would just make it for a funny situation. That's kind of how this is set up. However, I also felt there was a sadness to this one too. I don't know how Barbara Pym does it, but she'll make you laugh, but when you finish the story, there's really some sad, serious undertones to the story. And I really can't put my finger on what that is, but when I finished, that's how I felt. And it makes me just keep thinking about the story. The same thing with Quartet in Autumn. I felt the same way with this. I just kept thinking about it, and I'm still thinking about it. So Barbara Pym is an interesting writer, and I do want to read more of her work. This was a great one. I enjoyed it. And then finally, I read one more for the book list, backlist, whatever that's called, readathon. Elizabeth and Her German Garden by Elizabeth von Arnim. This was a very short book. It was hilarious. This is so funny. It is so funny. It's about Elizabeth. She loves her garden. She basically just wants to stay in her garden and have everyone leave her alone. And she has friends come stay with her. It's just the funny things that happen. Again, it's about society and women and marriage. And it's just told in a super funny way. And Elizabeth von Arnim is sarcastic and witty, and she's becoming a favorite writer. I want to read everything she writes. I know there's a sequel to this, so I hope to pick that up. I think it's something about the summer, so this would be a great time coming up to read that one, so I hope to pick that one up soon too. This was a 5-star read, and I want to read this one again. And then I read for Amish in April, and I read A Salted Caramel, an Amish Candy Shop Mystery by Amanda Flower. I checked this out from the library, so it's a large print. I read this, of course, just for the Amish part of this because it was called the Amish Candy Shop, so it would help fulfill Amish in April. But I wanted more Amish. The girl in the story is actually not Amish. Her grandparents are, and they own this candy shop where the murder takes place. The murder part was great. The plot was great. I enjoyed all that. But I was looking for Amish, and it's really not. And I really wanted more about the candy. I like reading about food and candy. I just thought, oh, this will be all kinds of great pastries, and it wasn't any of that. There was a few things, but not what I wanted. I wanted more of, I don't know, I just like reading about descriptions of food. I don't know. But anyway, it was a cute little story, but I don't think I'll continue this series. And then I read 2 books by L.M. Montgomery. And they were, the first one was A Tangled Web. This was super interesting. This was a roller coaster of a story. And A Tangled Web is the perfect title because it is a tangled web of 2 families, the Dark family and the Penhallows. And they have, apparently this is like a small community where there's no one else, so they kind of marry each other. The Penhallows marry the Darks. And it's about their past history. And at the beginning of the story, they're all coming together because Aunt Becky owns the heirloom, this jug, this water pitcher. And everybody wants it, because it's like been passed down from generation to generation. And so she's going to leave it to someone. She's going to announce it at this meeting that she's having on her deathbed, basically. When everyone comes together, everyone's introduced around the room, and you really have to pay attention because there is a lot of history going on in this room, and it's complicated, and it is definitely a tangled web of people, and they all have their own quirks, and you know, there's unforgiveness over things that are really ridiculous and all those kind of things. So it's really a roller coaster of a ride. And so as you're going through, you really have to pay attention to who we're talking about and what's going on. But I found it fascinating. I really enjoyed the story. I thought it was a fascinating read. There's a lot of surprises in the story about what happens with, I'm not even going to try to explain because there's so many characters in the story, but it is a soap opera. And I enjoyed it up until the last line. And if you've read this, you know what I'm talking about. If it wouldn't have been from that line, I would have made it a favorite read. But that really bothered me. I just did not like that last line because it was so unnecessary. It didn't have anything to do with the story. Anyway, it is a great read though. It's fascinating, and Ellie Montgomery can certainly tell a story. And then the other one I read was for the Annalong. I'm reading with another group of people that are reading through the Anne of Green Gables series, and we were on Anne of Wendy Willows or Anne of Wendy Poplars. This was a 5-star read for me. I really loved this one. Anne of Green Gables will probably always be my favorite, but this was a favorite. It had me laughing through the entire thing. There are some great characters in this one that are introduced. I also like that it's told through letter format. Anne is living in Wendy Poplars and she's writing to Gilbert back home. And so the story's told that way. And I enjoy those kind of stories, so I like that about it. But the characters were just laugh out loud funny. The situations were funny. The details were just some funny little things that happened. I was laughing all the way through. So this was such an enjoyable read for me. So I enjoyed that. And then I read, what else did I read? Oh, I read one more picture book for the Picture This readathon, and that was Miracle Man, The Story of Jesus by John Hendricks. Now this was one that was recommended by Chantel at Chantel Reads All Day. She had mentioned this, I don't even think she had the book, she just talked about if you haven't ever read it. Well, the next day I happened to be going to the library, so I checked it out. And this is a great picture book of Jesus. It's a simplified version, of course, because it is a picture book, but it just goes through the miracles that he performed. And the way that it's presented is just beautiful. The words that Jesus speaks is part of the illustrations. My favorite is this one. It says, "The miracle man stood quietly and then said to the boy, 'Friend, I say, rise and walk.'" And I just love the way the rise and walk is the buildings in the village itself. It's just, it's like that all the way through. And I really love the way that this was presented because the words come alive as part of the story, and that conveys the miracles of Jesus in a unique way. I just really love that about it. It was a beautiful book, and I hope that John Hendricks will do more picture books. I'm not sure if he has. If he has, let me know, because I'd like to see those, because that was really a beautiful one. So thank you, Chantel, for telling me about that one, because I really enjoyed that too. And then I read, let's see, I've talked about all these. I've got the books in front of me. I read this one by Amy Harmon. I received this one for Christmas. It's called What the Wind Knows. This is my first Amy Harmon. I enjoyed this book. It was a time slip. It's about a girl who travels to Ireland with her grandfather's ashes, and he has requested that his ashes be spread across this loch. So she goes and she rents a boat, she takes it out to the middle of the loch, and as she's spreading the ashes, this mist comes over, and it's like this heavy fog, so she can't see. Then all of a sudden, someone's shooting at her, and she actually gets shot. And then she's rescued, but she is back in the early 1920s. This happens in the early 2000s. But then she's taken back in time to the early 1920s. It was fascinating because when she is pulled from the water, she meets her grandfather as a small boy. And it was just those kind of things. Can you imagine, meeting your grandparents or your great-grandparents as children or as young people? That part was just amazing to me. And I was fascinated by that part of the story. I also was fascinated by the history because I don't know anything about that time period in Irish history. So that part was fascinating as well, and it makes me want to know more. So I loved that part too. I also loved that at the end of each one of the chapters, you hear, at the beginning of each chapter, you hear from her point of view, the main character, the girl that has slipped back in time. And it stays back, by the way. It's not a shift from present to past. It stays in the past mainly once you're back in the past. But after her point of view, at the end of each chapter, you have a journal entry from a man named Thomas. And I loved that even more because that was where there were a lot of details about the tensions and the feelings during that time period in Ireland. And I loved that part because I learned a lot of details from his journal entries. So every chapter ended with Thomas's journal entries. And I like those kind of stories. And so I just thought that was really interesting. So I love that. The only thing I didn't like about it was the romance in this story. I just felt it was not necessary. And I know people love the romance in the story. I've heard people talk about it. But for me, that was the thing that pulled me out of the story. I didn't like it at all. It just complicated things. And I know that was for drama's sake, but for me, it made it too complicated. I was like, just let her go back and experience this. You don't have to fall in love with somebody. And there's even more complications that I won't talk about from that. So I get why, because of the drama, but for me, that was just not necessary to the story. I did, however, enjoy it, and I will be picking up more by Amy Harmon. If you have one that's your favorite, let me know that in the comments. And I also read for the Kindred Spirits Club. I almost forgot. Kate House hosts the Kindred Spirits Club, and each month we read a different book. And for the month of April, we read The Girl of the Limberlost. I don't have a copy of that. I checked it out on ebook from the library, so that's why I don't have it here. But it was different. I enjoyed the story, but it was weird. It was written in the early 1900s, and I had no idea what it was about going into it. I just assumed it was kind of a fairy tale, foresty kind of story. I don't know why I thought that. That's what I thought. So as I started reading it, I thought, oh, this is about a girl named Honora, and it's a coming of age story. And at the beginning of the story, she's going to school, and it's about her struggles going to school, as well as her struggles with her mother, because the mother's just cruel. We'll just say she's not a nice mother. You think, okay, this is what the story's going to be about. But then, not even halfway through, she graduates, and that part of the story is over, and then there's a romance that starts. To me, it was like it was two different books, and there was just some, I don't know, there were things that happened at the beginning of the story that seemed like, oh, this is what this is about, and then it would just be dropped and would move on to something else. Although I was interested in the story, I was disappointed because I felt like we would get back to things that were unresolved by the end. There were characters that kind of just dropped out of sight. It was interesting. I don't think I'll pick it up again. And I do love to discuss the books with the Kindred Spirits Club. I don't think I was the only one that felt that way about the story. I'm glad that I read it. I am glad that I read it because now I know, but I won't be reading that one again. So what are you reading? What are your reading plans for the month of May? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.